Hey guys, I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I haven't done one of these in a while. I am here to do a video on
missed opportunities.
If you've never seen one of these before, basically I talk about a book or a comic book or a movie or a TV show and I say, this is the plot that they ran with. Instead, maybe they should have done this thing. And today I wanted to talk about an animated cartoon series from the Disney Channel from 2005 to 2007. This series was called American Dragon Jake Long. In the mid-2000s, I really liked this show. Later, like as in last year, I tried watching a couple of episodes. It was okay, but it wasn't nearly as fun as I remembered it being. It's definitely a show meant for children. It is not a show where adults could easily sit down and watch it and really enjoy themselves. There are some shows like that, for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender, or Justice League Unlimited, or Gargoyles, or even shows like Gravity Falls, which I did a video on last week or so. Those are shows I feel like anybody could sit down and watch those shows and enjoy them. American Dragon Jake Long, not really one of those shows. It's much more targeted at children, and it's really not meant to be watched by anyone other than children. So what is today's missed opportunity? One of the characters in the show was Professor Rotwood. He taught at Jake Long's high school for the first season. He was, I think, a mythology teacher. I know that sounds a little weird. In high school, there would not be a class exclusively meant for mythology, but this guy, he was basically like Professor Crocker from the Fairly Odd Parents. He believed in magical creatures. Everyone else thought that he was insane, and the protagonist of our show, Jake Long, he was actually a dragon. Kind of like in Fairly Odd Parents, the protagonist of that show, he had fairy godparents, and Crocker believed in fairy godparents, but nobody else did. It's basically the same dichotomy going on between Professor Crocker and Professor Rotwood. For the first season of the show, Rotwood was just a teacher at the school, and then in the second season of the show, he was promoted to being the principal. And basically, throughout the entire series, he was as inept as you could possibly be. He was literally one of the most incompetent characters in all of fiction. He really didn't seem like the kind of character that you would ever take seriously, except for in one episode. In one episode of Season 2 of American Dragon Jake Long titled The Rotwood Files, Professor Rotwood is basically acting like himself. He's fairly incompetent, he seems like a raving madman, even though we know that he knows the truth, he cannot explain to anyone else that he actually is telling the truth. This episode has him team up with Jake and friends to defeat a common enemy, and then at the very end of the episode, a huge, big game changer seemingly happens, where Professor Rotwood has this potion that will turn a human dragon into their dragon form. And he shakes Jake's hand and then exposes his hand to the potion, so his hand becomes a dragon hand. Nobody else sees this except for Jake and Professor Rotwood, and Professor Rotwood is like, I knew it. I knew you were a dragon. I cannot wait to expose you. So then how does this huge game changer affect the characters and the rest of the series? It really does not at all. In fact, I don't even remember if Professor Rotwood shows up anymore in the series after this. This was fairly disappointing in retrospect. It was actually fairly disappointing as I was watching the series. That was the very first time I had seen a character in this entire show display any kind of competence at doing anything. Even the good guys in this show weren't really good at being good guys. You might hear about things they had done that seemed really important, but we never actually got to see them happen. This was the very first time that we actually got to see a villain being kind of good at what he was doing. So what would I have done to change this? Well, one, probably I would have needed an extra season of the show to really take Rotwood in the direction that I would have liked to have seen him gone. Because if you have him find out that Jake is a dragon, like, with less than half of the season left, you're not really going to have a whole lot of room to really explore how this can change the relationship between Rotwood and Jake. Basically, I would have liked to have seen Rotwood kind of become a little bit more like Wesley from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. If you've never seen either of those shows, Professor Rotwood was very similar to Wesley. Wesley was kind of incompetent. The key difference between these two characters is that everyone else that he was hanging out with at Sunnydale and later in Angel, they all also knew that mystical stuff was going on. It wasn't like they knew and he knew, but they were trying to pretend like there wasn't anything going on. There was nothing like that. Wesley starts off being kind of a goofball, and as the series progresses, both in Buffy, but specifically in Angel, he starts to become a little bit more of a serious character. And by the end of Angel, he is a full-on serious character, and he is one of the most awesome characters in the show. I would have kind of liked to have seen Professor Rotwood sort of go along the same path that Wesley Wyndham-Pryce went on. Maybe not a full-on awesome demon slayer that Wesley was in Angel, but at the very least maybe he could have retired from teaching, and now that he knows for certain that there is mystical stuff out there, maybe he could either become a sort of ally to Jake and his crew, or maybe kind of sort of a villain. Not along the same lines as the Dark Dragon, who is kind of the big bad throughout the entire series, or maybe not even along the lines of the Hunt clan. Maybe he could just be someone who's out there trapping evil demons and stuff and banishing them to other realms. He doesn't necessarily have to be out there fighting Jake in every episode, but I would have liked to have seen this moment where he discovers that Jake really is a dragon kind of lead to something else. Something that he could have done throughout the rest of the series. We kind of saw in this series his role changed a little bit from season 1 to season 2. He starts off as just a normal teacher, and you're thinking, why isn't this guy being fired for trying to teach these kids that dragons and unicorns exist? And then in season 2, he's the principal of the school, and now it's like, oh no, he can do whatever he wants. I kind of would have liked to have seen his role change again if we had gotten a third season. Maybe at this point, the superintendent of all the schools in New York City, he decides, yeah, that Rotwood guy, he does not need to be the principal of that school. So then he fires Rotwood, and Rotwood decides to open up his own paranormal investigations team. And then he could have a team of demon hunters active there in New York, which is kind of something that Wesley had in Angel. Both when he was in charge of Angel investigations, and later when he had his own investigation team in the series. Now, naturally, this is not something that ever would have happened in American Dragon Jake Long. For the most part, this was the kind of series where the status quo always remained. You didn't have something huge happen in one episode and lead into the next episode. Very, very rarely did they ever have anything like that happen. I think the only time they ever had something happen in an episode, and it was referenced later on in the series, was when Rose seemingly lost all of her memories and she and her family moved to China. After that, we were no longer seeing her in the series until we later did at the end of the series. So this series would have had to have been totally different for this kind of missed opportunity to have even happened. It would have had to have been more along the lines of shows like My Little Pony or Adventure Time or Gravity Falls. It would have had to have been one of those shows where there was much more of an ongoing plot throughout the entire series as opposed to a series of standalone episodes that don't really have anything to do with each other. But since we do have shows like that nowadays, I don't think it would have been that much of a stretch for American Dragon Jake Long to have been this kind of show back then. So that's about all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will be back tomorrow with some other kind of video. So until then, I will see you guys later. Have a great day.